infinite banking is liberating people and transitioning them from bondage into freedom and educating them and giving them financial literacy, and which is something they should have had anyway, but giving them financial literacy and setting them free so they can set the next generation free. That's infinite banking to me.
Well, Cheryl, thank you for joining us on the Infinite Banking Initiative.
You're welcome.
We want to get started by just hearing your story and how you discovered becoming your own banker.
I was working for an insurance company, not working for them, but submitting business to a particular insurance company that was based in Atlanta. I was living in Chicago, and the account rep said, "You know what? You're doing such a great deal with us, such phenomenal, bringing us such phenomenal cases. I'm going to reward you. And I'm going to tell you a secret of mine that I only give to my best agents." And he began to tell me about infinite banking. And he said that I'm going to, when you go to Charlotte, North Carolina, because that's where my mom lives, I'm going to introduce you to some people that are really doing well in this, and they are going to help you take it to the next level. So I went to Charlotte. I met with the young ladies. I was super excited. And they ran out of the book and wanted me to find the book. And that was a journey trying to find that book. And by the time I found it and came back to them, they had moved, which is what they told me they were moving in the midst of me meeting with them. So a year and a half goes by, and I did nothing with the infinite banking, a regret of mine to this day, because had I done something initially, I probably would have met Nelson. And we're now in the pandemic. And I was like, man, the infinite banking was haunting me. It stayed on my mind, but I didn't know how to move forward. I didn't think about going to the website, about reaching out to a practitioner. That never crossed my mind. And I'm kicking myself. I'm like, I'm too smart for that, but I never thought about it. And then now we're in the pandemic, and I was doing some work with Les Brown, the motivational speaker, and he decided that he was going to go live daily because people needed to hear something during COVID. And he said that he asked me to help with the comments. Look in the comments and see if you see anyone that has a dire need or something that needs to be brought to my attention. And as he was live, and it was like 30,000 people listening to him, and we're going through the comments, is a series of us going through the comments. And I see this one gentleman, and he's desperate to reach Mr. Brown and be coached by him and so on and so forth. And I get his information. We have a conversation. And during the application process, he asked me, "What do you do in addition to working with Mr. Brown?" And I said, "Well, I'm licensed in insurance, and that's my primary thing when I'm not working with Mr. Brown." He said, "Have you ever heard of infinite banking?" And I'm like, "Have I? Yes, I've heard of infinite banking. What do you know about infinite banking?" He said, "Well, I'll make a deal with you. You get Mr. Brown to coach me, and I will give you a mentor in infinite banking." I was like, it's a done deal. And that's what happened.
So Dr. Cheryl, you talked about, what you like about our community is that everybody is giving for the most part, and there's no gatekeepers. Okay. Well, initially you talked about your first introduction to the infinite banking concept. You had to go through some agency in Charlotte. Can you expand a little bit more on that?
Sure. When I was introduced to the two young ladies, the gentleman that introduced me to the two young ladies led me to believe that this opportunity was from the two young ladies, that this is what they were doing. And when I sat down and met with them, they told me that they were starting their own banking company, and that they wanted me to join them because I was licensed in 50 states. And by me joining their company, it would make them a national company, and they can do insurance across all 50 states. And so I thought initially that the opportunity was through them, and I had to go through them. And although they did tell me about the book and I had to read the book, I still thought it was their opportunity. I didn't realize it was something that I could have picked up the book and called, or went on the website and called and got a hold of a practitioner or something like that. I had no idea about that until we went into the pandemic, and I met with the young man that then put me with a mentor, and that mentor took me all the way to where I am now.
So the mentor was an authorized IBC practitioner.
He was an authorized IBC practitioner.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good. That makes me feel better that somebody wasn't trying to like pretend like this is only for the rich. And I've heard stories like that before from a couple of our guys that, how come we don't know about this? Is this only for certain people? What do I have to do to get in the club? That kind of noise.
Yeah, I've heard that. I heard that before. But the good thing about the pandemic is that it leveled the playing field for the infinite banking concept, because the COVID millionaires, that's what I call them, the COVID millionaires, they were out there making money, and they became millionaires, and they didn't know what they do with their money. So they start researching. And it was the infinite banking concept came up on their radar. And then they started blogging about it, and they started podcasting about it, and they started sharing it with them. But if you see a lot of the podcasts or the leaders of the COVID millionaires, all of them have an infinite banking person on their team. Most of them are not certified, but they all have an infinite banking person on their team.
Yeah, and who knows what type of products are being sold.
Yeah, I know they're selling IULs. I joined their podcast so I could hear what they're doing, or I joined their webinars so I could hear what they're doing, and I say your person is maybe good, but they're not certified, and there's a difference.
There's a lot of people out there that are really smart. They're financial advisors, insurance agents, and they really, they understand what this is really about, and that's good, because this is not magic. It's simple. Okay. But, I talked about the dividend paying whole life insurance policy as the platform to implement these strategies. So the importance of Dr. Cheryl is that she's an authorized IBC practitioner. So she knows what right looks like, and she's bound by doing the right thing for her clients. And she understands the differences in these products and understands that the IBC needs to be the right product. And so that's why we have this program set up for our practitioners, so they understand this, and they're obligated to do the right thing. So that's the importance of it. And we promote this to the public so they can feel assured that they're not going to get sold something that looks really great on paper, but guess what? In a couple of years, you'd be coming back, looking for the right product to implement the concept. So simple. End of my announcement.
So when you first read Becoming Your Own Banker, what were your initial thoughts on the book?
I thought the book was phenomenal. The don't steal your peas, slapped me in the face. And I was convicted by it. So that's why I wanted to start changing. And then the idea of, I worked on Wall Street before I started my own business. So I come from Wall Street, and I was a fingerprint technician. I used to go around fingerprinting everyone. So that's why I pay a close attention to people's hands. I'm looking and whatever. So, when he started talking about the banks and owning your own bank, and I'm like, what? So I was fascinated by that. And I said, I'm going to apply this principle, because everything I'm doing now is not working. And so, I had the 401k that wasn't working. I worked long hours. That wasn't working. I'm robbing from Peter to pay Paul. Everything I was doing to get ahead wasn't working. And so there had to be something else. I knew there was something else. I just didn't know what it was or how to get to it. And I believe with all of my heart that this was the answer. And so I just needed to know how to get started. I got the book. I read the book. How do I get started?
Why weren't 401ks working? What does that mean?
Well, the 401ks at the time that I was an employee, I haven't been an employee for 30 years. But when I was an employee, I was young. I was too young I was putting all this money in. I think it was 6% of my salary, and they were matching it. But when I had a dire emergency, I couldn't have access to it. And the reason they told me was I was not 59 and a half. Then they had like 2 or 3 things that you can access the money for, but I didn't meet that. And then if you could access the money, it was all these penalties. And so that didn't work for me.
So you were a licensed insurance agent working for an agency, or who were you? I mean, you don't have to have any names or anything like that, but what kind of organization were you working for?
Well, when I got my license in 2010, I've been licensed since 2010. I started with property and casualty, and then I went over to health and life. And then when I crossed over to health and life, with property and casualty, I was working with a major insurance company. When I crossed over to health and life, it was at the time that the Obamacare just came out. And so they had all these agents that they were hiring when I lived in Chicago. And so I started doing a lot of work in health, and then life. And once I got to life, I stayed in life. That's where I initially wanted to be anyway. I got into insurance to do life insurance. I wanted to help people because before I got into life insurance, I was a business consultant from New York, and then in Chicago. I did a lot of business consulting. In fact, I was Female Entrepreneur of the Year. I got an award from Hillary Clinton. I did all that. I was doing well. Then I moved to Chicago because my daughter was grown, and I wanted to learn about being on the mission field and doing more work in church and in my faith and stuff like that. The worship leader that was at that church, she was 29 years old. She was married to a man that was 30 years her senior. And they had 2 children, a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. And she died at 29 years old from a brain aneurysm. He was 59 years old. He wasn't prepared for his wife, who was 30 years his junior, to pass. He had no life insurance. And he was not a citizen of the United States. So she died on January 1st. And it took him until the first week of April, I don't remember the exact date, to bury her, to have her funeral. And that was devastating to me. That story still bothers me. It was devastating to me. And so I got into insurance so nobody else will have to experience that pain. You know, I wanted to learn all of that I could so that I can educate my community, the Christian community, the African-American community, just educate, and single moms, most especially, because I was a single mom. There's so many things we don't know, and our head is barely above water because we're the only parent trying to take care of, and the one thing we don't have in place is insurance. And so I said, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to do something about it. And that's how I got into insurance, and so I became well-rounded. So I know property and casualty, I know health insurance, I know life insurance. And now all these years later, I understand why God had me on that path. So now I'm able to teach my clients and protect them. Not only because Infinite Bank teach you how to build wealth, right? And the other things that I've learned insulates the wealth that you build. It puts a wall around what you're building, so that something happens, life is lifing, you're protected.
Yeah, you led off with the devastation from the death of that young mother with 2 children. Have you ever had to deliver a death claim since then?
Yeah, I had one claim. We was in a think tank, and Mary Jo was on the stage, and she was talking about how she delivers a death claim and how she drove all these many miles to help that client. And I had just gotten that morning a notice that my client's father had passed. It wasn't an Infinite Banking, but it was a death claim. And I sent him the forms. I thought that's what I was supposed to do. Then I heard what Mary Jo said, and I was so grieved. When I left the think tank, I called him and I went straight to him. Just like she went, I went straight to him, and I took the forms from him and I did the forms myself. And I followed up with the insurance company myself. I took it away from him. I didn't know to do anything other than what I initially did. I had to be taught to do different, and Mary Jo taught me that. So that is now my standard, but that was my one claim
that's the holistic view of the power of whole life insurance. The death benefit is so critically important. That and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a touching story. So it's critical that people understand that this is IBC is about financing the things that you pay for anyway in your life. That's the lead in for IBC, but the death benefit is critically important. The generational wealth transfer piece that I talk about is critically important, and just taking ownership of your financial life. Where I think this is the only product where you don't have to rely upon a financial advisor or an expert, whatever it is to take care of you. This puts the responsibility back on the individual.
It puts the responsibility on them. It teaches them, equips them, and then it gives them the courage to change, to shift, to come out of the mindset that you're in, that you've been taught and you've been trained, and shift. So now you have to open up your bank statements and look at your finances. Now you have to see where your money is going, where are you paying all this interest to, who you're paying the money to, why you're paying the money, and make grown-up decisions and start small. You can start wherever. The thing I teach my clients, doesn't matter where you're at, you can start. Doesn't matter how much debt you have, you can start. It doesn't matter how old you are, you can start. It doesn't even matter if you have bad health, you can start. When I got my Infinite Banks, I was not insurable. I got my banks through my grandchildren.
Not your banks, your insurance policies.
I got my insurance policies through my grandchildren because I was not insurable for being overweight. So there's no excuse. There's really no excuse. If you want transformation, it's infinite banking. If you want to prepare for the next generation, it's infinite banking. If you want to prepare for retirement, it's infinite banking. Now, infinite banking is not the only solution, but you don't have a complete solution without infinite banking. And that's what I teach my clients.
I need to say that infinite banking is a code for the infinite banking concept. Okay. It's code for becoming your own banker. Okay. So again, we're not talking about banks. You're talking about the behavior of people. Okay. Like everything you talked about was them understanding what this is really all about and how to implement it in their lives. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't know how to implement it because they don't have anybody to coach them. Okay. And overcome some of those hurdles, like uninsurability, like you suggested. So that's great. So how many policies did you put in force personally for yourself? Whether, that you own?
As of today, I own 4, but by the end of the month, I will own 6. I'm looking to get 2 more because I need them. I need them very, very, very badly. So I have 4.
Okay. So you own the policies, but there are other individuals who are insured? Okay. That's interesting. That sounds like something I've been doing lately too. Like I haven't bought one of myself for years.
The beauty of grandchildren, the beauty of business partners, the beauty of, having folks connected to you that's insurable.
So you've talked a lot about your clients. Can you share with us maybe a success story that your clients have experienced where they have implemented the infinite banking concept in their life?
I'll tell you some of my favorite stories. How about that? Because I have most all of my clients are success stories. But some of my favorite stories, I have a client at the time, this is a couple of years ago, she was 67 years old and she was driving from Virginia back to Atlanta. She had just lost her mom and she was driving home and she was listening to a talk show and they were talking about different products on the show. And she calls me up and she says, "Hey, I just learned something new on this talk show and it looks like it's an infinite bank thing. Do you know anything about it?" And I said, "I do." And she's like, "Well, how come you never told me about it?" I said, "I've told you about it. Not only have I told you about it, but you own one." She's like, "Get out of here. I own one." I said, "Yes." I said, "Probably with all the things that's been going on with your parents, you didn't remember, but you purchased it. You purchased a policy about 3 years ago. And she's like, and can my policy do everything that this show was telling me that it could do? I said, yes. And she said, well, how much money is in there? I told her how much money was in there. She said, I'm about to get married.
You said she was 27 years old?
67 years old. And she said, I was trying to figure out when I get to Atlanta how to tell my fiance that we're 25% over budget. And I didn't know how to have that conversation. But now you're telling me I have enough money in my infinite bank to cover that 25%, and I don't have to have that conversation. Or if I tell him, I can tell him I already have the money. I said, exactly. She's like, how long will it take to get the money? I said, 3 to 5 business days. So that's what we did. That was phenomenal. That's one of my favorite stories because of her age, and she was so cute and whatever. After she got the money, she told him that he couldn't marry her until he had his own infinite bank. So she made him get an infinite bank. And that was funny because now, as of today, he owns 7 of them. I have another client that in November of 2024, he paid off his mortgage, and he wept like a baby. He cried like a baby. He was so excited that we put together a plan because his number one goal was to get out of that mortgage. And we put together a plan. It took us 22 months. And he was able to, on his birthday, he's able to pay off his mortgage.
So he took a policy loan, and the policy loan paid off the conventional mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
But he's still carrying a loan on the policy, though, right? Or has he paid that off?
That's almost paid off. That will be paid off by November of this year. We dug in, and we dug in hard. We put a big policy in place so that he can get that mortgage knocked out. And it took us 22 months, which is not a lot of time, 22 months. And it was successfully done. I have another client that purchased 13 acres out in Houston, Texas with her infinite bank. And I have another client that owns 24 policies. That's my biggest client. He owns 24 policies.
Is he having insurability left?
Well, he doesn't have policies just on himself. He has 5 sons. So he has policies on his children. He has policies on himself, policy on his mom. And then he has policies on business partners. People that have asked him to go into business with him. He has policies on them. But he owns 24 of them in 4 years.
Wow. I mean, I don't think I've heard that before. That fast.
He is a multimillionaire, but he owns 24 policies. And when I met him, he was out there. He was very successful young man, single young man, and spending his money wildly, just yachts and $300,000 cars and women and blah, 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 doing all of those things. And now in 4 years, he's turned around and he's saving. He's putting policies in place. He's saving. He's thinking about his next generation, his children. He's thinking about his mom. He's building an empire, and he's so excited. He's my favorite client, not because he has all the policies, but because every month I feed him a new book. He reads it. He comes back to me with a report, and he has a great idea, and now he's stable. He's a homeowner. He doesn't do all that frivolous spending anymore. He's invested in real estate. He's invested in small businesses. He's just building a massive empire for himself because somebody took the time to teach him how to do it right.
How old was he when he first started with you?
He was 46, and on Monday he turned 50.
Okay. So how did he find you?
The client that purchased the 13 acres, when he saw that she purchased the 13 acres, he said, "What are you doing, and how did you do that?" And she said, "Oh, let me tell you about Dr. Cheryl. Let me introduce you to her." And that's how he found me. It was a referral.
Most of your clients are referral based?
90% of my clients are referrals. I don't advertise. I'm terrible on social media. You go up there and you see a post maybe once a year. I'm terrible on social media, but I take good care of my clients. I spend a lot of time with them, and then they introduce me to their significant people.
Okay, so for the most part, they're your clients. You educate them before you pull the trigger, quote unquote, so they know that they're buying a properly structured whole life policy, they've got to pay premiums, right?
Absolutely. I don't rush into policies. I don't have to. I want you to be educated. I want you to make an informed decision, because clients that make informed decisions, they're going to stay with it. I've had clients that buy policies that don't understand what they're buying, and then they drop them as soon as something happens, Um, and so I want these clients to understand the commitment that they're making. And I want them, and I don't sell policies. What I do is I build portfolios around your goals and your dreams and what you tell me that you want. So if you tell me that you want to pay off a mortgage, if you want to prepare for college for your children, if you want to buy a house, whatever it is you're telling me you want to do, we're designing policies to fit the life that you say that you want, the goals that you say you want. And so if it's your goals, you have to have the buy-in. It's not my goals, it's your goals. I'm accomplishing my goals with my policies. So now let's accomplish your goals with your policies. And then I just touch base to make sure they understand everything is happening, everything is good. And that's why they refer other clients to me.
Lee and I just finished one of our coaching academies, which is, a training session for our practitioner students. And our facilitators are, our experienced IBC practitioners. And, we talk about, finding your niche, building your business, and what success looks like. And more often than not, the conversation turns to like that if you start selling, if you're in the IBC world, okay, if you truly believe in the infinite banking concept, if you understand Nelson's book, if you use Nelson's book correctly, then you don't have to drag clients around, because they know what they're doing, and they know that their performance, what they're doing is more important than the insurance company. But if they don't understand that, then like you said, they don't know what they're doing, and they lapse a policy, right? Or they just don't have a clue what's going on. So one of the central points that we talk about in the coaching academy is the difference between the infinite banking concept, underline the word concept, and selling life insurance. Okay. So you're talking about the concept, which is very, very important, because you're not leading with a product, right? You're leading, okay, what's your goals and aspirations, and what would work best for you? So that's an important point. I just wanted to highlight that. That's exceptional. So you don't have any kind of standardized policy design. So all your stuff is totally customized based upon your client's financials and their goals and aspirations.
Yes. Yeah, it's totally customized. I don't do a cookie cutter operation, because then you miss things. So, and I have some things that are similar, but it's all custom.
Well, so Cheryl, how does practicing the infinite banking concept empower, families and business owners to build generational wealth differently than traditional financial means?
Well, most of my clients are self-employed people. I work a lot with the self-employed. And with us, with this community, we don't have infrastructures in place for us to build wealth. That we're just left alone out there. You make your money and figure out what you do with your money, right? So with infinite banking, it brings them a structure. It brings them information on how to start building for themselves retirement, how to build for legacy, how to have cash flow inside of their business, how to purchase the things that you need to purchase. It brings them information. It brings them structure. Now they have something to work with. And so the traditional things that's in place doesn't work for them. They can't have a 401k unless they put the whole company into the 401k. The things that are in place doesn't work for business owners or small business people. Most of my clients are 1 to 5, 1 to 5 employees, or solopreneurs or things like that. And so that's why I wanted to focus on that community, because there's not a lot of options out there for them. and they love the infinite banking concept because they are in control. And the self-employed community, that's why they're self-employed, because they don't want to be tied down to the mindset of a W-2 employee, 9 to 5. They don't want this. They don't want restrictions. They want freedom to do what they believe is right. And infinite banking fits perfectly into that world because it gives you the control. It gives you the liquidity. It gives you the structure that you need, and it helps you go from here to there, which is the next generation. Most self-employed people are doing it for their kids, for the next generation. So it's a perfect fit. It's a perfect marriage. I think it was what was designed for that community.
Well, and earlier you were talking about community with your clients. You yourself are an authorized IBC practitioner. And, what is your favorite aspect of that community of authorized IBC practitioners? You attend our events and you're involved and you're engaged. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that.
I love the community. I love the fact that there's no gatekeeping in our community, that any of the practitioners, those that have been in there longer than me, those are bigger than me, I can go to any one of them and ask questions. And there's no gatekeeping. There's no join my join my community and pay me $3,000 a month for mentorships. It is none of that. The information, they not only give you the information, but they follow up with you to make sure you understand it, you're implementing it, see if you need help. It's just wonderful. And then they remember you the next time you come through. And it's amazing. So it doesn't matter how long you've been in the community. They just embrace you. When some of the legends, what I call legends, say, "Hi, Dr. Cheryl," I'm like, "Oh, they know my name." The first time I went to talk to David, I was like, "Oh my God, I can't talk to him. He's a legend." And so, yeah, that's what I love most about the community.
You talking about David Bowie?
Yeah, David Bowie. Yeah. That's my favorite thing about the community, and I've gained so much in my practice because of the information they gave me. I cut years of errors off. The thing about niching down, whew, that was a lifesaver. That right there has turned my business. I can't say it turned it upside down, but it expanded. We grew as we niched down, and we niched down some more. And Mary J was like, "Niche more. Come on, Dr. Cheryl, niche more." Now she knows niching is my thing, and she comes for me. I'm part of the Canada group with Wendy. The ladies of IBC. I meet with them. And it's just I just love that community. I just love them.
Yeah, that's a great group of people. And, we all are definitely trying to, improve each other and, just educate. And that's one thing I found is that everyone is very generous, like you said. So it's a great great community to be a part of, for sure.
Yeah, because of the way they treat me, I make sure that when someone calls me, I take the time. Doesn't matter how busy I am, because I've received that generosity. I want to also extend it. So,
well, what were some of the challenges that you faced early on? You've touched a little bit on that, in learning from some of your mistakes. What were some of the challenges that you faced when you first started implementing the infinite banking concept?
When I first started, I had the mindset of an insurance agent, because I was already 10 years in. And so infinite banking concept although it's an insurance product, it is not an insurance sale, and I had to learn that. I can't be the one talking. I had to be the one listening and taking notes. I had to learn it's about the client. It's not about a sale. I had to learn that the book is the most important thing. If they have not read the book, I cannot work with them and watch the video, making sure that they have the book, they read the book, that cheat code that we have now in the book. Well, it's not in the book, but we put on the book has helped tremendously. So those were some of my struggles in the beginning. That was a lot of my struggles in the beginning. And then, learning how to properly design a plan, not what the client is telling you and pressuring you to do, but what's best for the client, and having the conviction to say no and walking away from the client. Sometimes some clients I can't serve because they want me to do something that I know is not in their best interest. And so rather than put my license on the line, rather than put my peace on the line, I let them go.
What are the types of things that they want that you don't agree to?
That 90-10 thing, that is huge. They want a IUL. That's huge. Those are two major things. So if you insist on having an IUL, I'm not your practitioner.
Well,
If you
hopefully
want a
nobody's
90-10
their
plan,
practitioner with IULs. Yeah.
if you want a 90-10 plan, I'm not your practitioner.
We've had those conversations with some of the other practitioners on podcasts. And, one of the things that a great takeaway that I got from some of them was that they use that as an opportunity to educate those clients on, why that's not the right policy structure and, what is the right one for them. And so, I thought that was a great way to kind of flip that on its head and really use it as an educational opportunity for the clients themselves as well.
I agree with that, and I've done that, but there's some clients whose mind is made up, especially since the noise out there is so big and you're saying something that's contrary to what everyone else is saying. So some clients are determined, and I've had some determined clients come back. Yeah, I've had some determined clients come back, and I get clients that other people have gone ahead and given them their 90-10s or the IULs. I just rescued someone. I call it rescue missions. I just rescued someone with an IUL plan, and I had to restructure it. And so I get my rescues. I get about 3 or 4 rescues a month.
So somebody, you'll turn them away because they want an IUL, and they go find somebody else, and then several years later they come back to you, or
About a year or two. It takes about a year or two for them to realize I made a mistake.
So what makes them realize they made a mistake, after a couple of years?
The person I just rescued last month, first of all, he was 74 years old. Didn't need to be an IUL at 74 years old. He was 74 years old. He got the IUL when he was 72 years old. It was a variable product. I don't know. It lost him a lot of money. He was retired, and he lost like $30,000 or $40,000. I think it was $34,000, some amount of dollars in the 2 years. He's not old, and he's too old to make to have that kind of loss. And so he comes back. He comes to me, and I help him get out of that. But I find the more educated a person is, the harder it is to teach them.
Oh boy, that goes back to the human factors, right? The rival syndrome. Yeah, let me make one clarifying point here for the listeners. Insurance products are insurance products are insurance products. I don't have, any kind of favoritism for any one product over another product. I'm a whole life believer because that's all that I do and that's all I own. But when we go back to the infinite banking concept, we go back to becoming your own banker. The infinite banking concept is a trademark, and become your own banker is copyrighted and whatnot. And that whole thing looks like you can do the infinite banking concept with any insurance product, but we like whole life. No, that's not what it says. It says that the infinite banking concept is using dividend paying whole life to conduct the concept. So it's all wrapped into one. So if somebody says they can do the infinite banking concept with IULs, legally they can't. What they can do is they can do a overfunded product to use for finance using an IUL. I mean, that's perfectly acceptable. They can't label it the infinite banking concept because that's not what it is. It's very specific what it is. And so our practitioners are prohibited from using any product but a dividend paying whole life product for a client who wants to implement our concepts. So it's as simple as that. And so that sometimes that gets lost in the weeds, and I just want to take this opportunity to emphasize that. And I do it more often than not, but I think the more we talk about it, the clearer that is.
It's a lifestyle change, and it's having to undo a lot of the things that everyone was always told. So it's kind of hard to undo some of those things when you're working with new clients. And so, how do you work with those people, and how do you get them to understand the infinite banking concept?
The very first thing I do is I have them look at the video so they can hear from Nelson himself. That more than 50% of the time transforms them. That video. And opens them up to wanting to hear more. Then I go to the book. But I start with the video. I used to do it the other way around, but I have more success with starting with the video because they're hearing it directly from him, right? And they feeling his passion, his commitment. And now that they've heard that, when they go to read the book, it makes more sense to them. And then I share with them some practical stories. I tell them about current clients. I tell them about what I've done with myself, my own life, the transformation that I've made in the last 5 years that I've been doing infinite banking, how my credit score has changed, how I went from a renter to a homeowner, how I now am a jet setter. I travel around the globe, and using my infinite bank, how I support my mom who's not in a nursing home, but I pay for round the clock care for her. And so my lifestyle has changed. I'm no longer in debt, and so when I tell them my own story and stories of my other clients, it's what they want. I talk to people that are strangling in debt now. I talk to people that are scared, that don't know what's happening with the marketplace because it's all this up and down conversation. They don't know if their money is safe anymore. I talk to people that don't have enough money for retirement. And so when I tell them real solutions and I show them my world, I bring them in and show them my world, and I am sincere about it, they want it. They want the solution. So it's really not a hard sell. It's not even a sell. I'm giving them, you've prayed and asked God for an answer, and I have showed up with your answer. This is the answer, and so either you want it or you don't. Most people want it. They just sometimes they don't understand it, but most people want the answer, and they're relieved, and they're grateful, and so it requires them to unlearn some things, and they have wobbly legs. They're scared. I have some clients that are scared, but they trust me. I said, just trust me, just trust me, just trust me, and then I educate them all the way. I don't want you to just take my word for it. I'm going to give you this book, that book. I'm going to show you some various evidence. I'm going to walk and then I'm not there for the one policy or the two policy. I'm checking in with you quarterly. I'm checking in with you the second year, the third year, the fourth year. I'm here. I'm learning about what you do. So if I see an article that can help you, if I see an opportunity that can help you, I'm building a community with you. I want to be with you and your children and your children's children. I want us to stay connected together. So when they see that I'm not about a sale, that I'm not here today, gone tomorrow, that when my phone rings, I answer it. And so that brings comfort. And then when they have their own transformation, it is a done deal.
Sounds like you're learning a lot from a lot of our folks, man, too. Their success stories too, because I think that's critical. That personal service is sometimes lost in the industry. And the more I talk to practitioners, it's like, one of the things I ask them is like, how many clients can you handle? Because it sounds like a workload, not just selling a product, but you have to continually coach them to quote unquote, keep them between the ditches. That's a lot of work, but a lot of responsibility on both sides.
Yeah, it is. And that's why I'm looking to expand my team. I want to become, I really don't want to, but I'm going to become a boutique agency. And I say boutique because I don't want more than 12. Jesus had 12 disciples. So I figure I can have 12 agents. People say, why 12? I said, Jesus did 12. So that's my number. But I want agents that have my heart, and I want agents that is not in it for the sale. I want them to be about the client, And so in order to do that, I have to grow slowly and small, in my opinion, so it's not lost. But in the meantime, in between time, I'm putting together systems that help automate some of this stuff that I do. AI is fantastic. I love AI. I went to school for computers, so I love AI. I didn't graduate, but I went to school for computers, and I love AI, and I'm putting various systems and things in place to help me stay not relevant, but to help me to manage the client flow.
Yeah, it's important.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So 12 disciples. Yeah.
12 disciples.
I have a little Nelson story for you if you want to hear it related to that.
I want to hear
This
it.
sounds sacrilegious, but I'll say it anyway. When everybody says that, Nelson, you're brilliant. You invented all this. You're brilliant. He says, "Oh, not really. It's always been there. I'm more like Paul, not like Jesus." I'm a disciple. It's like, oops.
I love it.
Well, Dr. Cheryl, thank you so much for being with us today. And as we wrap up, we just want to ask you, what does the infinite banking concept mean?
It means freedom. It means answered prayer. It means thinking outside of the box. I tell my clients on a regular basis because when I tell them you have liquidity, you have control, they like, what does that mean? Especially if you never had liquidity and control, right? it's cliche. So I said, it's like renting an apartment versus owning a home. When you rent an apartment, you have to sign a lease. So now you're bound by their contract, right? And when you rent an apartment, you gotta always get permission. If you can put a nail in the wall, if you could paint the wall, if you gotta operate within the confinements of what they gave you, and you only have that space, be it a one apartment, one bedroom, two bedroom, whatever, and you have to operate within their rules and whatever those rules are. But when you transition over to home ownership, you have a lot more freedom. You can paint your walls, you can build your deck, you can walk your land, you can do all those things. And I tell them, having an infinite bank is like giving up the apartment, going into the home ownership. Now you have a voice in what happens. Now you can take part in the equity that's building in your house. Whereas when you're paying your rent, the money's just going out the window. And it's like, oh, I get it. It makes sense. So infinite banking is liberating people and transitioning them from bondage into freedom, and educating them and giving them financial literacy, and which is something they should have had anyway, but giving them financial literacy and setting them free so they can set the next generation free. That's infinite banking to me.